Councilmember Anderson,
Here.
Councilmember Lauren,
Aye, here.
Councilmember New,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Biasi,
Here.
and Mayor Cowan.
Here. Okay, we're going to move on to the Pledge of Allegiance. Tina, you want to lead us in the pledge?
I would love to. Do we have a flag, Kathleen, or shall I put mine out? Okay.
That works.
I pledge
Pledge
allegiance
allegiance
To
the
the
flag
flag
Of
of
the
the
United
United
States of
States
America,
of America,
and to the
and
republic
to the republic
for which
it stands,
stands
one
one
nation,
nation,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty
liberty
and
justice for all.
justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully, we only got maybe one more time to do that way. Back to some in-person meetings. With that, I just need to remind everybody, this is a Zoom teleconference meeting due to the COVID-19 state of emergency. And it's being conducted this way under the governor's executive order. The agenda and city website state how the public may address the city council. You can join by Zoom or on your phone. You can use the raise your hand icon, or on the phone, you can press *9 and we will call upon you. We will take public comment after every item. We will do roll call votes, so everybody knows who voted, since we're not in person and you can't see us all at the same time. And we will limit the speakers to 3 minutes, and the meeting will be recorded. And I think that's most of it. Close enough. We're almost done doing this. Okay, we're going to move on to approval of the agenda. City manager, is there any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes.
I'll move the agenda. I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by
Here.
Councilmember New, and a second by Councilmember Lauren. Ashley, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Anderson,
Aye.
Councilmember Lauren,
Aye.
Councilmember New,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Biasi,
Aye.
and Mayor Cowan.
Hey, aye. Motion carries unanimously. I'm ready to get out of here already. Okay, we're gonna move on to council staff comments, and we will start with Councilmember Lauren.
All right, the last city council meeting was May 4th. On May 10th, I chaired the Sac Valley Division meeting and also chaired the YCTD board meeting in the evening. On May 11th, I was part of the executive meeting for the WRA and the YSGA. On May 12th, I attended the League of California Cities Legislative Action a couple days, but that particular day was with Assembly Member Cecilia Aguiar Curry. And on May 13th, I attended the SQUA Zoom to just kind of be in the background on their discussions. And on May 17th, I met with City Manager Treppa to talk about this meeting. And then immediately before this meeting, I was in the Citizen Advisory Committee meeting for Yolo County Transportation District. And they let me out at the last second. So I'm here tonight.
Hey, thank you very much. All right, Councilmember Anderson.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. On Wednesday, these are all Zoom meetings, I believe. On Wednesday, May 12th, I attended the Yolo Solano Air Quality Management District Zoom meeting. And on Thursday, May 13th, had a Zoom meeting for the Lower Pewter Creek Coordinating Committee. On Friday, May 14th, Yolo Solano Air Quality Management District Zoom meeting. That was a meeting of the Clean Air Funds Committee. And on Monday, May 17th, met with City Manager Treppa for agenda review for tonight's City Council meeting on as Tuesdays 3/18. That's my report.
Okay, thank you. Council member New.
Thank you. On the 6th of this month, I attended I Zoomed a land use and natural resources meeting for SACOG. And we discussed trail networking. They're trying to work out trails so that throughout the SACOG region, we could all walk, cycle, or do something like that to get around. Also, there was a discussion of the early, I'm gonna have to put my glasses on, I can't read what I wrote. Early action planning, which we did receive $40,000 for, but there was more discussion about ways that it can be used. And then also there was a brief discussion of forest management. Then on the 7th, I attended the Winners City Senior Community of FF&E meeting. And there's always a lot going on there. I wouldn't even try to tell you what happened, but they're a very active committee, always coming up with ideas for how to raise money. And actually, just to forewarn the city manager, or not the city manager, the mayor, we might have to have a little talk with you about endorsements. And on the 5th, on the 10th, which was a Monday, all the council members and our city manager met to have our pictures taken. We shouldn't forget that. All of us were there. On the 14th, another Winners FFE meeting. And on the 17th, there's Yolo Habitat Conservancy meeting. Good news to report out of that is that the Habitat is now actually on pretty sound financial basis, and all the cities in our Habitat organization loaned Habitat a little money, and you'll be happy to know that they're ready to pay you back. And including, I think Winners gets about $10,000 back, something like that. And then this morning I met with our city manager to discuss the agenda. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Biazi.
Thank you, Mayor. On May 6th and May 13th, I attended the city's management staff meetings. On May the 10th, I attended the chamber mixer. On May the 11th, along with the mayor and the director of the chamber, we had a tour of the Perfect Union Cannabis Dispensary in Sacramento. They run a very nice operation over there, very impressive. On May the 12th, along with the mayor, we had an ad hoc committee meeting with city staff to talk about the Homes by Town Development Agreement. On May 14th, I attended the Winners and Rural Area Senior Town Hall meeting. On May the 17th, I had the agenda review with the city manager. And on the 17th, I also participated in the drive-by/walk-by 90th birthday celebration for Gina Ogando. So happy birthday, Gina. That's all I have, Mayor.
Yes. Yes, thank you. As mentioned by the Mayor Pro Tem, I was also on the Perfect Union tour in Sacramento on the 11th. And I was also on the Homes by Town prep meeting. And I was also at the chamber mixer. And we had a VCE meeting last week. And I was also participated in the senior town hall meeting on the 14th. where I spoke and Cecilia Curry spoke and Supervisor Saylor spoke. Pretty well attended, pretty good meeting. I had to drop off a little early, so Bill hung in there for the endurance of the at least 2-hour meeting. And yesterday, we sent out a letter that was crafted with the help of staff to Supervisor Saylor and the county regarding their desire to allow cannabis grows facilities within our SOI. And we just wanted to let them know that's not the influence we wanted in our sphere of influence. So I think they talked about that today at the Board of Supervisors meeting, and maybe if city manager knows anything about that, she can fill us in on her report. And I was also on a call today with the city manager to review tonight's agenda. And I also want to mention, I know all of us on the council, and it might have included the city manager. I think I've gotten at least 4 letters, emails regarding fireworks. And I think they're all pretty much spurred on by the fire we had a couple of nights ago out on Moody Slough. And maybe that's something that Chief Lopez can fill us in a little bit more on, but the letters were all, all the ones I received were against fireworks in winters. So, Ashley, did you get all those letters as well?
I did not. I know I was copied in one that was emailed over, and then I do have the hard copy scanned into central files, but those are the only 2
Okay.
that I've seen.
Okay, well, I think they were addressed to all the councils, so we'll try to make sure you get, we'll send them all over to you so you have them for the record.
Yes, please.
All right, thank you, everybody, for all your work on all the extracurricular activities. And we're going to move on to public comment. And this is when anybody from the public can speak to the city council on an item which is not on the agenda. So if you'd like to talk about something that we should know about that is not on tonight's agenda, this is your opportunity to do so. Ashley, do we have any hands raised for public comment?
I am not seeing any hands up at this time.
Okay, did we receive any written comments for public comment?
We did not receive any written comments for tonight's meeting.
Okay, all right, seeing none, we'll move on to the consent calendar. Kathleen?
Yes, thank you. We have 3 items on the consent calendar. The first is the minutes from the regular meeting scheduled for May 4th. The second item is a resolution 2021-23 approving the engineer's report for the annual levy for the citywide maintenance assessment district for fiscal year 2021-2022. And then the third item is also a resolution related to the citywide maintenance assessment district. And this is resolution number 2021-26, declaring the council's intention to levy and collect annual assessments and setting the time and place for a public hearing for June 15th. And those are the 3 items on the consent calendar.
Okay, thank you. Is there any council questions or concerns? No. Ashley, do we have any public comment on the item or any written comment on the consent calendar?
I did not receive any written comment.
Okay, we don't have any hands up,
I'm not seeing any hands up
Okay.
either, no.
then we will entertain a motion.
I would make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Okay. You're on mute, Pierre, but I see your hand. We have a motion by Councilmember Lauren and a second by Councilmember New. Ashley, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Anderson,
Aye.
Councilmember Lauren,
Aye.
Councilmember New,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Biasi,
Aye.
and Mayor Cowan.
Aye, motion carries unanimously. Okay, we're gonna move on. Item 7's presentations, which we don't have any of tonight. So we'll move on to discussion items. And the first discussion item is a public hearing regarding weed abatement. So, okay. Is there any questions or concerns or staff report before we open a public hearing?
No staff report unless there are questions for staff.
Okay, then we will officially open a public hearing at 6:45 PM. Ashley, do we have anybody from the public that wishes to speak to the weed abatement issue?
I only see Tina's hand up.
Okay, Tina,
Yes, hi, Tina Loudon, 320 Neiman Street. Hi, Mayor and City Council people and everybody. On this Exhibit A, there's an address at 502 Neiman Street. I have no idea what that is unless it's the well or Shirley Rominger's. So who would I go to find out who owns that property? It says to go to 909 West Grant Avenue. Who would that be? Would that be the school?
does anybody from staff know the answer to that?
Mayor, I'm looking that up now, and that is the Shirley Rominger School District. I imagine their property identified as adjacent to that has an open field. I believe there may be some dirt piles there and some minor weeds through there. So that's probably addressing the school district.
Okay, okay. Thank you, Chief Lopez.
You're welcome, Tina.
Thank you. Is there any other comment for the public hearing, Ashley?
I am not seeing any other hands up. At this
And no
time.
written comments?
I did not receive any written comments.
Okay, then we will close the public hearing at 6:47. All right, if there's no further comments, then I guess, let me see here. Do we need to approve this?
Yes.
Yeah.
You would make a motion to order abatement of the parcels
Okay.
listed on Exhibit A.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, we'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Okay,
I move that we approve the order for weed abatement and rubbish, refuse, and dirt for specified parcels that are listed in our agenda packet.
I'll
Okay.
second that.
all right, we got a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Biazzi and a second by Councilmember New. Ashley, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Anderson,
Aye.
Councilmember Lauren,
Aye.
Councilmember New,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Biasi,
Aye.
and Mayor Cowan.
Aye, motion carries unanimously. Okay, we'll move on to the next item, which is Resolution 2021-27. It's amending the salary schedule for July 1, 2020 to June 30th, 2021. Who's taking this? Shelley?
Yes, good evening, Mayor and City Council. Before you tonight is Resolution 2021-27, adopting an updated salary schedule for the fiscal year 2020-2021. CalPERS requires that we have a publicly adopted and posted salary schedule. And in August of 2020, we did adopt a resolution that approved the 2020-2021 salary schedule. However, that particular schedule did not have the appropriate salary for our city manager. And so what you have before you is the adopted schedule with the proper salary for our current city manager. So staff is requesting that you adopt Resolution 2021-27 so that we can get this on our website and have the proper information available to the public and for CalPERS.
Okay, thank you. And it's my understanding that that is the only change to this, is just the addition of the new city manager's salary.
That is
Correct.
correct. That is the
Okay.
only thing that changed.
Okay. Is there any questions from council on this item?
I just had a question on item
Go
E.
ahead.
I was wondering if, when I looked it over, it looks great. It has the city council stipend on there. I was just wondering if anybody knew how long the stipend amount has been, the amount given to council.
I believe that the stipend amount has been the same
Since caveman.
I think around 2004 or 5. Believe it or not, prior to that, it was $150 instead of $180. So it's almost been 20 years since we've changed our council stipend. So yes, it's been the same for a very, very long time.
I was quilting today and at a place, and they asked me if, hey, is that a business decision? Like, can you make a living being serving on city council? And I did not faint. I just said, no, it's just a stipend. But in that conversation, I thought that, maybe it's time to slightly raise that amount. If we have an election coming up and we're going to have new seats, we're going to have, new people, and hopefully we can get some younger people that want to serve. And, it would make it maybe more attractive. I know personally, I spend way more than that a month on just stuff, stuff I have to do. And I'm not sure if I'm the only one. I, of course, don't talk to other council members about the agenda, but I was wondering what the process was if we were ever to raise that from, the 19th century amount to the 20th.
I can double check. I believe that amount is specified in the municipal code. I think, I'm not 100% positive, but we could certainly do some research and at least come back and give you an idea of what the process would be to change that. It hasn't been changed in so long. I'm not positive on the process.
It seems like that would be great. Just after emerging from almost being done with COVID, it seems like a really nice thing if it were to happen.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any more council comment on the item? If not, Ashley, do we have any public comment on the item?
I do not see any hands and I did not receive any written comments.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right. Well, with that, if there's no further discussion, we can entertain a motion.
I would move the item as written.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Okay. We got a motion by Councilmember Lauren and a second by Councilmember New. Ashley, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Anderson,
Mayor,
Councilmem-
I have one question, if I can raise my hand here.
Go ahead.
In terms of raising salaries, I think there's at least some legal requirements that have to be made, I guess. And legal can put us up on that.
Joanne, can you speak to that?
Yes, the salary would likely be revised by ordinance. And then I don't know if the stipend, well, yes, it would be revised by ordinance and we can amend that.
Okay, thank you. So we'll go back. Councilmember Anderson, we're doing a vote on the item for the salary schedule.
Aye.
Councilmember Lauren,
Aye.
Councilmember New,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Biasi,
Aye.
and Mayor Cowan.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay, next we have the 2021-2022 budget workshop. Okay, who's starting us off on this one? Kathleen?
I think I'll start, but then I'm going to turn it quickly over to our finance director, Shelley Gunby. I would like to say that the staff has worked really very hard on presenting a balanced budget for the coming fiscal year. And I'd particularly like to recognize our finance director, Shelley Gunby, as well as our public safety chiefs, Chief Lopez and Chief Miller, as well as the public works team and all of the staff. This has been a very arduous process every year. It's been a particularly difficult one this year because it's been one of significant transition for the organization. And I'm pleased to share that we are presenting a balanced budget for next year, as well as some positive news for how we're going to close out this fiscal year. And I'd really like to recognize Shelley for her efforts in this process. So, and with that, I'll turn it over to our finance director.
Thank you for those kind words. So fiscal year 2021 is, as we all know, that's the current year that we're in right now. And we did present a balanced budget with it to the city council and to the community last year. It had significant cuts in it. And some of those cuts we've talked about before. We had a police sergeant who retired and we didn't replace that position. We had our housing and economic development manager who retired and we did not replace that position. We had some other, when this prior city clerk retired, we reclassified that position. We had a management analyst that resigned to go to another opportunity. We did not replace that position. And we pretty much closed down all of the recreation, including most of the pools. You know, all we had was some lap swim last year. Those were all decisions that were made in light of COVID and in light of what we felt was going to happen. And so I'm pleased to report that currently we are expecting a little bit of a surplus this year. Our revenues did come in higher than what we predicted. And some of our expenses are higher as well than predicted. We had a lot of change happen, even over and above what we've talked about here. As you know, our prior long-term city manager left, and so there was the ramifications of that, which there was some financial ramifications from that. Our HR manager has resigned, and we are dealing with that right now. We're trying to get the pool back opened. And so right now we are anticipating about a $63,000 surplus. Again, this is an estimate. We're not at year end. We still have about 50 days left in the fiscal year. Fingers are crossed that my estimates are good. And so the plan right now is we had a little bit higher estimated revenues and excessive expenditures. We've had to do a couple of things with that. One of the things that we wanted to do was we wanted to get the pool open in June. And so we took some of the estimated savings. We've applied that to pool staffing and getting some programs ramped up in the pool area. We know that's something that the community is anxious to get going, and we are actively working on that. So we reprogrammed some of our unanticipated revenues to help us move that along. We've also had a server failure here. So we have planned on getting that replaced, hopefully within the next couple of weeks. They placed the order and it should be coming in. So lots of changes are happening. The $63,000, if it comes to fruition, we will most likely just leave it in our fund balance. If you look at the chart, let me see if I can share my screen. I have to get back here now. This one. Yes. Excited, it worked. So I have put together a PowerPoint presentation, but what I'd like to point out is that if you look at our trend for the 4 years prior to this year, we have been using our fund balance to the tune of close to $1 million by now, a little over $1 million. So this is the same thing as using your savings account to pay your monthly bills with, if you think of it that way. And while we did come in with less use of our fund balance last year than I had predicted when I did this same process last year, we came in about $90,000 better than I projected. We still used a lot of fund balance. So part of what we use our fund balance for is to provide cash during the first part of our fiscal year. If you remember, we get all of our property tax in lieu comes in January. Those are our two largest revenue sources to date. And so we need to have cash available for us to be able to continue to pay the city's bills during that time period. So the $63,000 is almost $64,000 is projected to go back into our savings account so we can start building that back up. So we have a rainy day fund, and also so that we have the cash available to provide cash flow. Some of the larger cities will do things like tax revenue anticipation notes. They're called trans, or they'll have a line of credit, and all that does is increase your expenditures because you have to pay interest on all of that. So the city has always operated with a little bit bigger fund balance so that we're able to do that cash flowing throughout the year as we're waiting for things to come in. So this is our general fund budget. And so we're looking at revenues of about $6.2 million, and we're looking at expenditures of about $6.2 million for the 21-22 fiscal year. So this is just a really quick snapshot. This comes directly out of our new budgeting software, so it's really cool. I'm enjoying getting these tables and being able to pop them out like I was able to do this one. So we are proposing a balanced budget. $10,000 is really not a lot of a safety net, but we're glad that we're able to do that. The expenditures in the general fund by department, as you can see, the police department, as usual, and Chief, don't hit me, has the highest portion of the budget. This is normal for all communities. Second is the fire department, which is a little abnormal. Usually the costs are closer together in the departments. And so our fire department is smaller than our police department, and it is reflected. Building inspection costs are in there. Public works, the pool, the community development department. We have no housing department. We're going to roll that up into community development next year, not have it separate. City manager, community center, finance, community, city council, recreation, city clerk, human resources, and the description pending should say transfer. These are some of the little glitches I still have to work out. So these are the expenditures that we have planned by department. And again, as you can see, it is budgeted. As we're looking, or it is balanced, I apologize. As we talk about some of our revenue sources, this bar graph is pretty nice because it gives you a pictorial view of what our sales tax has done. So you can see in 2018, 2019, the last year before the pandemic, you can see where our sales tax was, and you can see the effect of the pandemic in 1920 when we started having the shutdowns in March. And then you can see in 2021 where we remained shut down with all the limitations, and what we propose for 21-22. And we do get our projections for our sales tax from HDL. They do a deep dive into the analysis of all of the information that they have, and they're usually very, very, very close. The good news is that we're looking at recovering our sales tax base in about a 2-year time period rather than a 5-year time period. Last year when we had this discussion, I think I told you it was going to take 5 to 7 years to recover. This year, if you include the 19-20 year, we're looking at about a 3 to 4 year recovery time period. So that is good news for us. Transient occupancy tax. As you all know, the Winners Hotel opened in late 2019 and then immediately was shut down in March of 2020 for a time period. Prior to the 1920 year, basically what we had was the Abbey House Inn producing the transient occupancy tax. We're looking at about $190,000 for the current year. And that may be low given what I'm seeing happening in the discussions that we've had with Geisel. And then for next year, we've got 424,000. So you can see the growth that we're anticipating in the TOT. We have talked with the owner of the hotel. We feel confident these are realistic numbers. I will say that I did use a little lower number than what I was given because I'm not sure when the Fairfield Inn is going to be done and completed and able to be occupied. And I'm not sure what we're going to see the Fairfield Inn maybe take away from Hotel Winters as far as the PG&E traffic and all of that. So we're being cautious. Once we figure out what's actually going to happen with Fairfield and we get some actual results, we may come back at mid-year and make adjustments to this revenue source. But we feel it's prudent to be more cautious and not over budget with expenditures based on revenues that we really want to watch. The property taxes, we have engaged HDL Corn and Cone. They again do a deep dive into all of the information that they can get out of Yolo County to provide us with property tax and property tax in lieu revenues. You can really see the impact of the building activity that's going on in town. The percentage, typically property tax, if you haven't sold a home, it goes up by a maximum of 2% per year. That is set by the county auditor or the county tax assessor. And this year they're only bringing it up about 1.39%. So the inflationary factor is lower, but because we have all the new homes that are coming on board, that is helping drive our property tax up. And property tax is a recurring revenue, just like TOT and sales tax. These are the kind of revenues that we like because they're reoccurring. We typically have a pretty good handle on what's going to happen with those. We have a lot of trend data that we can get from our consultants. And so these are estimates that we're comfortable with. The biggest factor that's been helping us this current year is the building activity that's going on, all the building permits that are being pulled. And you can see the light blue is actual building permits here. And then all of the salmony color is other things. So not a brand new building permit, but like replacing the water heaters and things like that aren't new homes. And you can see that we went from in 16-17, we had about $170,000 in building permits total for the year. And you can and 96,000 in 17-18. And then 18-19 is when all the new housing kicked in, and you can definitely see the impact on our general fund. We need to remember that these are all one-time revenues. And I think we've mentioned it before, when you pull a building permit for a $500,000 home, the general fund portion of that building permit is about $3,500. One time, you only get it at the time the building permit is issued. Once that gets flipped into a property tax, once the home is completed and goes on the property tax rolls, we get about $1,200. Typically, the assessment is 1% of the purchase price of the home, so it would be about $5,000. But that gets split between the county, the schools, the city of Winters, a few other things. Our share is around 24%, and that's about $1,200. So the difference that we need to think about is the difference between this $520,000 one-time money that's only going to turn into around $130,000 in reoccurring revenues in the out years. And that's something that we need to think about as we look at future planning for our finances. is figuring out how to get more reoccurring revenues in the system. Once the other issue that we talk about is our citywide assessment district. You guys did a couple of resolutions this evening to keep those assessments going forward. You approved the engineer's report and you approved the intent to levy. It's $82.50 per residential unit, and it's $26.25 per non-residential unit. The assessment itself is anticipated to generate $225,000, but our expenditures are $311,000. And we have been subsidizing the general fund out of the, or subsidizing the citywide assessment out of the general fund for about the last 18, 19 years. There's no escalator for increasing the amount of the assessment. And so currently $85,658 of the public works budget is going directly into the parks to operate the parks for the next fiscal year. The water fund is balanced. It has a little bit of revenues in excess of expenditures. And we're meeting all of our debt service covenants with the current budget. So that's, if you remember, about 2 years ago, we did new bond refinancings to lower the debt service so that we could make sure that we were always meeting our debt service coverage. And we are still doing that in the water fund. We are also doing that in the sewer fund. Now the sewer fund shows a negative, but we have about $285,000 in capital projects. And when you do capital projects, the budget is done on a cash basis. So I've budgeted for that, but in accounting, it's not actually going to show as an expense because it becomes a fixed asset once the capital project is completed. And it's just, it can be really confusing if you're not an accountant, but we want to look at how much cash do we have coming in, how much cash do we have going out. So that's how we budget. When we get done at the end of the year and you look at what the results of operations are, they're going to look very different because the results of operation should show in this scenario about $50,000 surplus. Something that we have not included in this budget is any of the ARP funding. We're waiting. We did get a big packet last week to read through of the guidelines from the Treasury Department. So we need to read through that. We need to come up with ideas that we can bring forth to the City Council to discuss and to get direction from. And I think we're really looking to target a big discussion about that when we do the goal setting workshop that I think we're going to be having this summer to help us talk about moving our finances forward, doing some fiscal sustainability research, looking at having those reoccurring revenues increasing and becoming less dependent on the one-time revenues. And so at this point, I think I've gone really fast over all of this. I will say that we did add some positions into the budget that I wanted to point out. I mentioned that a sergeant had retired last year. The chief is reorganized a little bit, so we're going to bring on a police officer instead of replacing the sergeant. So they're getting a position back. It's just a different level of position. Chief Miller had brought this forward. We talked about it and he's comfortable doing that. We've included a senior planner in the budget, and that's because Dave is going to retire and Dan's going to go to Italy. So we need somebody that can step in and that can provide those services for us. And there is also funding in there for a change in finance director about this time next year. Y'all will be probably hearing this talk from a little bit different person. And so let's see, did I catch I think that's all the position changes that we recommended.
Shelley, may I just pop in? We have the reclassification of the public works superintendent to a director position.
Yes, I apologize. I did forget about that. So, and so we do have that. So a lot of things, we are doing a little bit of reorganization. Finance isn't going to be just finance anymore. It's going to be finance, administration, recreation, and information technology. So we're going to be reorganizing a little bit that way. The city manager's office is now going to be the city manager, human resources, and city clerk office. And community development is going to be under the senior planner, is going to be community development, housing, building. So a few, you're really not going to see a lot of difference, but in the accounting area and in some of the supervision area is where you're going to see the differences. You're still going to get all the services that you've been getting. The community is still going to get all the services. We just kind of reorganized it, and some areas are taking on additional responsibilities throughout the year. The graphs that I showed you this evening, the graphs and the tables, this is part of our new OpenGov building or budgeting process. It's been quite the learning experience this last year, but it is going really well. I'm hoping that by June 1st, I'll have most of the budget pulled together. I just, there's a lot of little things to figure out, and I'm excited to be able to hopefully show you that on June 1st when we bring this back for adoption. But at this point, I'm open to any questions, comments, suggestions that the council might want to make.
Okay, thank you, Shelley. All right, is there any council questions or comments regarding the budget?
I have several. I can start if nobody else has any comments on it.
Go ahead, Mayor Pro
Okay.
Tem.
Yeah, first of all, I want to thank our financial director, Shelley Gumby, for all the work that she's put into this, and the new city manager as well, coming into this in the middle of the year and, you know, learning all these things. It's been a pretty big challenge for all of our staff, I think, to put this budget together, and I commend you for doing this. You know, with the COVID restrictions we have going on, and we're transitioning to a new software management part for the budget, which is also, I know, another big challenge for you to learn, but it will be good for us for the future, where when Shelley decides to finally retire, we'll have somebody who'll be able to step in and hopefully learn that software program and come up with future budgets more easily than using some of the spreadsheets that Shelley knows by heart from the past years. But I do have some questions regarding the budget. And some of these I've talked a little bit, I've asked about. And one thing, you know, I was on the senior town hall with a number of our senior citizens this last week. And one of the high priorities that they listed was, you know, improving our sidewalks. We have a number of sidewalks that are in really bad condition, with the upheavals, just various places falling apart. And I asked how much we have in our budget for sidewalks. And I think Public Works has 15,000 budgeted in there for sidewalk repairs. And I think that might be one area we need to look at increasing in the future, is more money to help us repair our sidewalks. I know it's a high priority for me. It has been for a long time. And I know a lot of seniors, as well as, you know, we're trying to encourage people to walk, you know, our community be more walkable. And if we're going to do that, we need to make sure that we fix our sidewalks so that they're safe for people to walk on. I'd like to see us look into possibly budgeting some money in the future for senior programs as well. I know we don't have anything in there currently to, you know, kind of help where we don't have a recreation budget per se for the seniors. So that'll be something that we should consider for future. And then one thing, Shelley, when you talk about, you know, our reserves and what we have in there, we've been spending it down, but just to remind everybody out there, we have a fiscal policy that was set forth by the council that we maintain a 50% reserve. And because we've had to spend it down over the last, you know, several years, we've dropped down to, I think, around 28% reserve now. So that money that's in, even though it sounds like, oh, we have all this money in reserve, it's not money that we can just go out and spend. We have to use that for operating expenses, like Shelley pointed out, the first 7 months or so. So as far as the building activity revenues, and I know we had a lot coming in because of the housing that's going on. But one thing that, and I know it's not going to be ongoing forever, we do have quite a few homes still to be built out there for the Stones Throw. We have the Walnut 10 that is in the process of planning. There's the Screeden development. There's the Crown Communities property around the LDS Church. So we do have some of that income hopefully in the future, as long as building activity maintains its pace, or somewhere close to that, we'll have that coming in. But it is something we can't, we need a more stable revenue fund to be able to run our city. Those things kind of go up and down with the building cycles. So one question also I had, so on the water and sewer funds, so they're pretty much balanced. Does that mean we won't have to look at any water and sewer rate increases in the near future?
Well, a couple of things about that. We had a water and sewer rate study that we started shortly before COVID hit last year, early in January. And I put that on hold last summer when I was the interim city manager, because I just didn't think it was feasible with everything that was going on to continue down that path and paying for that service. The one thing that we were hoping to include in our study, and it may be something that the city manager wants to think about, is we need to include in our rates the ability to do some of the larger capital replacement items. And right now, we don't really have a funding source for that. And so that was one of the things when we looked at rates when we started the rate process last year, that we wanted to fund operations and have some money that we could start accumulating to do repairs and replacements on the wells and on the sewer lift stations. They would be separate, of course. The contract is still open. I haven't shut it down. I did get an email from the consultant a couple of weeks ago, I think it was. And so I think we need direction on what to do. I will say that a lot of the revenue, particularly on the water side of things, is due to people being home more and using more water. The kids have been home instead of going to school. The schools, their water rates are a little bit different and set on a different pace based on all the studies that are done. A lot of the kids that were going out of town to private schools have been home for quite a bit. So, and we're getting ready to head into a drought. And so we're in a drought, and we're going to be hearing from people telling us that we need to conserve. And with conservation, that means water use goes down, which means the water revenue goes down. So we could be coming back to look at budget adjustments next year or early in the year of 2022. And so I'm not sure. I don't want to say it's absolutely out of the realm, but I also don't want to say that we absolutely need to do it. I think we need to keep an open mind and figure out what the best thing is to do. But there's a lot of unknowns out there with COVID and the drought. Those two things worry me.
Yeah. So I think another one of the areas that we want to look at maybe in the future, and we'd have to figure out what the process is on this, but the citywide maintenance agreement that we have, that we approved earlier, it's at $82.50 per home citywide. That hasn't been increased since it was put in place in the I think it was 97. But I know we've added a lot more parks and, landscaping areas along the streets that the city has to maintain. So all these costs are going up, and there are more homes to help pay into that, which helps. But I think we need to consider in the future looking at that assessment fee again. It goes on to the property tax bills. I think it goes on with that. It's paid by the property owners. So I do want to also point out and thank our city manager. It's noted in there that she has waived her 2.5% cost of living adjustment, which was agreed to in her contract when we hired her. And she's done that on her own taking, so that to help us balance a budget. And I want her to know that I really appreciate her sacrifice in doing that for us. So thank you.
Thank you.
The other thing is I also wanted to say I like the idea of our community development department where we're going to put in a planner, a part-time planner, because our planner is leaving, someone to do all the work that Dan McGuire was doing and that, Dave Dowswell's been doing to fill these positions with someone that will be there full-time and not someone part-time here and there. So I think that's definitely a good way to go to get that corrected for the future. And also wanted to thank the fire and police departments. I know they've been asked to cut their budgets and they've done that, even though, when you look at some of the tables in the report, it looks like the fire or the police department's budget is going up, but that's because they're filling a position, I believe, that we decided not to fill previously because of the COVID restrictions and the income that we didn't know how certain it would be. But the police and fire both have cut their operating budgets as asked. So appreciate that as well. Those are all the comments I had. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other council comments at this time? Jesse, you're muted.
I think Pierre was next, and then I have my hand up.
Okay.
Okay. I too just want to thank Shelley for all that she's done for us. And I know that she's put in a lot of time and effort and study to learn how to do everything that she's done. And I want her to know that I appreciate it. And I'm sure that all the council does, but we thank her. And I'm hopeful that the income will keep coming in. I do worry about the fact that even when we build houses and we take in money, it's not something that's going to be a long-term fund, as Shelley just talked about. And so we have to look for other sources of ongoing income, which I know that there's no disagreement from the council on that. So all things said, well done budget from Shelley and Kathleen. Thank you both and keep up the good work.
Thank you. Councilmember Lauren.
Yeah, thank you. And I will just add to the praise of Shelley Gumby. Thank you so much. It's amazing, and you make it look so simple. No, it isn't. I'm so glad that we have the new software that you can just lay it all out. But I just had a few questions. One, when I'm looking at the budget and I'm listening to first Bill raise the question about recreation or community service or seniors. And I was just wondering, I know that we can't count money that we don't have, but is there any update on I believe it's April 20th in our meeting, we had a presentation about community development block grant money and trying to get some money for our senior programming. So would that be something that instead of prioritizing maybe the money for senior programs at this time, we would be able to plan that later once we know when we get the money? Or do we have any update on that?
This is Kathleen Trupp, the city manager. No, we don't have an update. We expect typically it takes about 3 months for the state to process those requests. So we're hoping to hear by later this summer. And then once we have been notified whether or not the grant has been approved, it'll then take several months following that to actually receive the contract that then needs to be executed. So we don't expect to be able to recruit for a part-time senior coordinator for easily 6 months, if not closer to 9 months, just based on how the state is tracking. It might be that things are improving in terms of state's capacity to process those agreements, but we won't have any information until later towards the end of summer.
Excellent. And I thank you so much. And I do look forward to having a planning and goal setting session with council later on so that we can prioritize stuff like that, like the seniors and recreation and pool. I also echo the statement that Bill made about the 8250 citywide assessment district. I think we put a pin in that as something that we look to for the future. It's definitely needs to be updated. I wasn't sure of the year, if it was, I think Bill said what, 92,
I think it was 97,
97.
93,
It's,
90s.
93.
Long time ago.
yeah, I've updated all my clothes since then, and we should probably update this. But yeah, I thought that was important. And then I don't know if this is a budget dust, as they say in Davis, but I was wondering if there's any discussion about the vehicles that we have pre-pandemic. Everybody on council, when we needed to go somewhere out of the city, when we could arrange it, we arranged to use the vehicles at City Hall. We have a number of Priuses and an electric vehicle. And I was just wondering, I don't think that we've been able to use them since we've not been able to do regular meetings. I assume that somebody in the planning department would be able to use them to go check on houses as needed. But in the future, I was just wondering if we need that fleet, and if we don't, if we could reduce the fleet to just help offset any of the great need that we have. But I also realize that the money could be very small, budget dust money, so it might not be worthwhile. But I would ask that we just spend, maybe look into it as one small solution. And thank you, Kathleen, for all your work on this. This is an amazing undertaking, and I really am grateful for the work that you've done. Thank you, both of you, Shelley and Kathleen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Anderson, I can't see you, so I'll just ask, do you have any comments or thoughts regarding the budget?
Yeah, one scary thought is, does anyone know what the position is on the deep water contamination, or so-called contamination? Are we being expected to remedy that? I can't think of the name of it. I think it's very expensive, whatever it is.
Are you talking
Chromium 6.
Chrome 6?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one.
I don't have,
I can answer from the league that when COVID happened, right before COVID, the state was really pushing to move swiftly and set a new standard. But when COVID hit, all of those projects such as that became superfluous. But what we might be looking at in our long-term future is having some sort of groundwater or enriching our water in some way. So we might be out of the woods on that one for a while, but we might be in whole new woods in the future, depending on the severity of the drought and the health of our subbasin.
Yeah, thank you. I would mention, just of interest, the Clean Air Funds Committee meeting, which I covered. There was an idea floated of, this isn't originating in Europe, but it's a bike that seniors can be transported around by volunteer, so let's say students come and sit on the side and they pedal this thing, and the seniors get a free ride and reserve time for however they can, hour and half a day or what have you, but it's coming at transportation from a whole other view. You may be hearing more about that in the future, but it's not something we can afford, but where things might be headed in the future. And that concludes my remark. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Harold. I've got a couple of comments as well, and I echo everybody's sentiments on Shelley's work here and Kathleen's work here. Superb as always. On a couple of the things that were mentioned. Bill mentioned that the sidewalk fund. I know a few, I don't know, it was 2-3 years ago, we bumped it from 10 to 15,000. Personally, I'd like to see that bumped from 15 to at least 20, simply because I'm in the trades and I know how much more we're paying for concrete and lumber right now. We're actually very fortunate here in Winters because we have a great public works staff that's able to do most of that sidewalk repair and work ourselves. So we get a lot more bang for the buck. We're basically just paying for materials. But I've seen material increases over the last year of 500 to 600% in lumber and concrete. So I feel it it's justified to bump that up a little bit. I know that's a small item, but we need to keep working on all the sidewalks and stuff for the walkability of our community for sure. And I also want to touch on the senior component. And with that senior town hall the other day and stuff, it was brought up about staffing the new senior center, which is a very important thing. I know it's not as big a concern for this upcoming budget, simply because we'll be at the tail end of this budget before the senior center is completed. And I know we're working on the grant, the CDBG grant for to help with kicking off staffing for the seniors, but that's also one of those one-time pots of money, so it won't last forever. And so we need to really think long-term about where that's going to be and where it's coming from. I'm kind of assuming that would fall under our community center department, maybe in that same department. I don't know if Shelley would it have its own department or?
It would be in recreation.
Recreation, okay.
It. And I will tell you that one of the positions, we did try to add a recreation coordinator, recreation supervisor. I can't remember what title we tried to use. We did try to add a position in the current budget that we presented tonight. Unfortunately, that I just could not get it to balance with the cost of a full-time person in there. Mm-hmm. And so the thought process is that we would use the grant maybe to pay for half of that person. And then maybe next year when a certain person has already retired and you don't have to include some extra funds into the 22-23 budget for that issue, there might be some additional funding in the general fund to help do that, because the budget does include funding for duplicate finance director for approximately 3 months of next fiscal year. And so there's some opportunity for some savings there when you get past that. And part of that's because I have a lot of vacation and stuff built up. So whoops, I'm sorry, my battery's going dead. So anyway, we tried it. It is a priority for the city manager, and we will be looking at getting that put in next year.
Okay. And I think that's appropriate anyway, because like I say, we all know they haven't put shovels in the ground yet. And by the time they do, we're looking at least, 10 to 12 months, most likely, before we can swing the doors open. So we do have some time here to make that all happen. So I just want to make sure everybody knows that, it's definitely a priority for us, that we don't want to open a senior center and not have staffing for it.
Exactly.
That would be almost criminal to me. But let me see.
And
I think that was.
We can, if we revisit at mid-year and look and see what our revenues are coming in, that might be something that we can look at in January, February timeframe, which will be closer to when the center's opening. I think ideally what the city manager had in mind is getting somebody here before it opens so we can they can start putting those programs together. So I think looking at stuff in January next year is going to be really important, figuring out where our revenues are compared to what our projections are. And we might be able to make some adjustments at that point.
Okay, good. That sounds real good. All right. Well, I think that's about all I had for right now as well. So, Mayor Pro Tem Biazzi, you're on mute, buddy.
Thank you. One more question, maybe Shelley, you could address for me, is how will the American Rescue Plan funds, in what kind of effect will that have on our budget whenever we do receive them, and how does that work into this?
Well, we will have to do budget adjustments because we'll have to get authority from you to accept the money and authority from you to spend the money, because the city council makes those decisions. So we will be coming back with a budget based on that. As far as impacts to the general fund, I'm not quite sure yet. I'm still trying to wade through all of that. It was 500 pages, I think, or something like that. It was a huge number of pages to go through. And I kind of went through looking for specific things and highlighted a couple of things, but we need to sit down, we need to read it. We need to make sure we understand exactly what we are and are not allowed to do. And then we need to come to you, get input from you on what direction you'd like us to take that funding within the guidelines that Treasury gave us. And so that's why we were thinking probably when we do the goal setting workshop in August, and then we would have to come back with a budget adjustment, setting up the fund for the ARP money and setting up a spending plan for it. So we would go through a similar product like we did tonight, only it'll just be for the ARP money.
Thank you.
So basically what you're saying is, unlike the federal government, we're going to read it before we spend it.
Well, I'm going to read it before we spend it because I don't want to get yelled at if we do something wrong. I like to follow the rules from the beginning. It's just much cleaner that way.
Yeah. Bill?
That's all I had. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Is there any other comments before we open it up for public comment? If not, I will open up the public comment, and Tina has had her hand up since this started. So,
Well, but
Ms. Loudon, go ahead.
Tina Loudon, 320 Neiman Street. First of all, I've done a lot of budgets, and Shelley and Kathleen, I love all the descriptive that you have with all the stuff. And it makes it a little bit clearer because I've seen a couple of budgets through here, the city. I would like to talk about the citywide assessment fund. It is over 25, 28 years old. Hello? Inflation. We need to bump that up. And I just looked at my property tax, and yes, you're charging me a whopping $82.50. What is the procedure that we can bump that up? I don't have an amount in my mind. To adjust to inflation, I don't know. I don't know the answer. Do you guys, or does the attorney know? How do we do this? Shelley?
Hi, Tina. Or Shelley, would you like me to address that, or would you?
Yes, please.
Okay, great. And this actually goes to the comments that were raised by Councilmember Loren and Mayor Pro Tem Biazzi. And for any increase to the levy beyond what was existing, or allowed or previously approved, it would actually be subject to an assessment tabulation of all the property owners in the district. And it would also have to comply with the requirements of Prop 218 and the Prop 218 Omnibus Implementation Act, as well as the Landscape and Lighting Act.
Okay, in English.
So that actually means that a ballot has to be printed and sent to the property owners, and they have to be notified 45 days in advance, and then they can attend a public hearing and make comments at that time.
Okay, and would this go into a general election, or it just, we calculate who answers this? What do we do?
Yes, so the ballots would be printed and mailed out to the property owners. So you won't necessarily see it in a general election where you vote for, say, council members, but you will receive it at the time that the increase for the assessment is being proposed. And at the public hearing, after the public hearing closes, then the ballots would be tabulated.
So if I could also jump in, it's a citywide process where we notify the entire city, and all the property owners have an opportunity to, we have to notify them of whatever the proposed increase is, and then they have an opportunity to protest. Is that correct, Joanna? So that if more than 50% of the property owners protest, then that's the tabulation that you're talking about?
Yes, it's a little bit differently than the water, sewer, and garbage, but it is effective. It's similar process, yes.
So right, but it's not a ballot in terms of going to an election that is run by the county. It's a more of a paper process internally just within the city, and it's really it's a mailing that goes out to all the property owners within the city. But they have an opportunity to voice their opinion as to whether or not they agree or disagree with the change in the assessment.
Okay, because we have added a lot of parks, and there's a lot more parks on near Moody Slough and Neiman and Taylor, and there's just a lot of work for Eric and their crew. Hi, Eric, wherever you are. And I've noticed also there isn't any bathrooms at a lot of places either, and we don't have the budget for that either. We don't have the budget to clean that. We don't have the budget to keep, them our parks groomed and looking beautiful. They are beautiful. So I would like to have some input if Eric is around to see, where he's. Eric, are you here? Maybe he's not here. Maybe he's gone.
Okay, thank you, Tina.
I really think we need to up it. I don't mind paying 150. That's nothing. That's
All
nothing
right.
for us property tax people. Nothing.
Compared
So
to
how do
what
we
we
get
pay.
this going? Come on, Wade. How do we get this going?
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Tina. We have another hand
No, I'm
up.
not done. I'm not done.
Oh, okay. Hurry up, you're burning your time.
Okay, I'm not Davis though. So, we're going to be going into a drought situation. And is there any impact on the water fund? Do we have any contingency on that? And let's see there. I think that was Bill already answered my question on something else. Shelley?
So the water fund does have a fund balance. In the water fund, it's called equity. But there is some fund balance prior year savings accumulated there. So should we see revenues drop, we can pull from that if we must, or hopefully we won't have to do that. And we can look at the capital projects and things that are scheduled as well for both water and sewer. So both of them do have rather robust retained earnings at this point. So they also have a reserve fund requirement, not quite as big as the general fund, because the water fund, typically the money, water and sewer, both money comes in month by month. You guys get a water bill, you pay your water bill, so we have cash flow that happens. Unlike the general fund where sales tax that you pay at the store, we get about 3 months after you pay that. Property tax, we don't get it until January and May. So a lot of the reserve balances are in place based on cash flow issues, but there is funding there. And we did last time when we did our rates, we stabilized the rates a little bit by having more of the rate in the base and less of the rate in the per unit cost. So even though we anticipate that the number of units of water that we sell goes down, we are capturing more of the revenue stream through the base fee that doesn't change every month. So we did a little bit of that a couple of years ago as we adjusted the rates.
Beautiful. Thank you.
All right. Richard Casavecchia.
So before I get to my question, I noticed Jack Vickery had dumped a question in chat. I guess he had to log off. Kind of similar to Tina's. He was just asking about an escalator for inflation. If there's one in place for looks like he's asking about regular inflation adjustments for like fees and permits.
I'll read the question after you are finished with your question, Richard.
Okay.
Thank you.
I was curious, Shelley, you're saying that end of the year we have to use some of our cash for the monies that we haven't received yet. Do you know what percentage of our revenues end up as being receivables at the end of the fiscal year? Is that something that's might be a problem later on if we keep dipping into our reserve funds?
So the reserve funds are used for cash flow. They're not necessarily, we just use it to cash flow. Hopefully, when things are operating correctly, we use it to cash flow. And receivables usually run, I would say about 8 to 9% of total revenues. Because we get our last sales tax, we get our last utility user tax, we get our last property tax, all of those things. There's always a delay, TOT tax, all of that. Typically, the year ends June 30th, and then everything's due around, mostly due by July 30th, which means they send out the check on July 30th and we get it sometime in August. And then the state has their own little schedule of how they do things, and so does the county. Typically, we have all of our receivables received by the end of August. So we do use it for about 2 months to cash flow, but that's not, it gets replaced within that, after that 2-month time period in most instances. Now, I will say in the last few years, unfortunately, we haven't been able to do that because last year with COVID and just some other decisions that have been made in the past, we use some of our reserve funds, unfortunately. So it is time to start replacing some of that.
Yeah, I was curious. I know it's a temporary usage that gets replaced. I'm just wondering if we keep whittling down, dipping into it every year, is that ever going to affect our ability to float the cash for a month or two?
I don't know if it would impact us for a month or two, but certainly there's a level. I would not be comfortable going much lower than we are right now. I would like to stay above 25%, which technically most cities, theirs is around 25%. Ours is a little more robust because we don't take advantage or deal with all of the various financing opportunities that we have, because it just costs you more money in the long run. So 25% is pretty much an industry standard for fund balance. We have 28% right now. Our policy asks us to do 50%, and so I'm not concerned at this point, no, but we do need to figure out how we stop using fund balance and make that a priority.
And one quick follow-up question to Jesse's comment about adjusting the size of the city fleet. Is the city fleet regulated by DGS at the state as far as like vehicle authorizations, or is that
No,
something we do?
no, the fleet, the size of the fleet is determined by the needs of the city. The state has no input.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, is there any other hands up, Ashley?
I do not see any other hands up. There was one question in the chat.
Okay, go ahead.
The question is there an escalator in place to account for inflation and adjust the fees that the city can control? If not, is that something we can look into putting in place? Maybe not adjust every year, but at least on a 3 to 5 year basis.
I think that was answered.
So it depends on what they're talking about. If they're talking about general fees, I think it was the last council meeting or maybe the one before, I've kind of lost track, but we did take the fee schedule. We did bring the fee schedule forward to the city council, and we did use the escalator to raise the fees for across the city. And it includes building fees, engineering fees, fire fees, permit fees, recreation fees. And we did bring that forward. It is built into the adopting resolution. And we also did it for impact fees. So yes, we do that, and typically it should be done every year. The big problem that we have that doesn't have an escalator is the citywide assessment district. My understanding is, and I wasn't here when this happened, but my understanding is that it was a purposeful decision not to include an escalator. I don't know why. I wasn't here. I wasn't part of those discussions. But that is the only one that I'm aware of right now that we do not have a procedure in place for increasing. Water and sewer fees, they go up based on a rate study that we bring before the city council and before the community. We do the Prop 218 process, which is a protest-driven process for raising fees. And so we have mechanisms in place, and we've used those mechanisms in the past, but the citywide assessment does not have any of those mechanisms built in.
Okay, thank you. All right, Ashley, one last time, do we see any other hands, or is there any other written comment?
There are no hands up and there are no other written comments.
Okay, I believe this being a workshop, we don't have anything to vote on here. So if there's no further comment from anybody on staff or the council, we can move on. And with that, we will move on to the city manager's report. Kathleen.
Yes, thank you. And if the council would like, Chief Lopez is still on the line and he can provide an update regarding the vegetation fire that occurred. I guess it was last night or 2 nights ago.
Yes, that would be great. Chief Lopez, fill us in.
I'd be happy to. Good evening, Mayor, council members, and members of the public. So yes, kind of bleeding into a couple nights ago, I believe on Sunday evening. We did have a grass fire out on Moody City Road, across of County Road 88, just north of the new housing development. Came out late at about 9:30 in the evening. Our personnel, along with some mutual aid resources, responded from various cities, also including CAL FIRE. That piece of property just so happened to fall within CAL FIRE's state responsibility area. So that really, one, kind of deferred the jurisdiction to them, which also allowed us to gain some more resources and commit those resources throughout the entire night and the next day. But in the investigation, it's still underway. What I can tell you at this far is from some reporting parties is that an explosion of some type was heard in that area. And soon after, the fire had developed. We have found some firework devices on scene, and we're still following up with some leads in the investigation. CAL FIRE is the primary lead agency for the investigation, so we're working with them on this particular case. Fortunately, no significant property damage, no structures were lost in this. It was a very close call for the one residence that is out there just off 88. Our crews got there first and had immediately engaged in fire suppression and structure defense on that home, but we're able to save it. Total acreage amounted to about 17 acres. Very wind driven, as many of you may remember or recall that evening, 15 to 20 plus mile-an-hour winds. And just fortunately, it was going in a good direction where it was surrounded by orchards and other areas, and we were able to contain it quickly. That's all I have to report. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I have a question.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Chief Lopez, good to see you on here tonight. I got a letter. I got a letter from. I got a letter from, there you are. I got a letter from Deborah LaGuarcio and a bunch of questions also from people about fire safety. And the assumption is that if as long as people use safe and sane fireworks, that there's no fire danger. And I was just wondering if you could speak to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, that couldn't be any further from the truth. Just because fireworks are designated as safe and sane, What that means is that they're compliant with the California State Fire Marshal's Office to use in jurisdictions that allow safe and sane fireworks. Winters is a community. We do have an ordinance with safe and sane fireworks that allows the use of safe and sane fireworks, but that doesn't mean they're not, they don't contribute to fires, whether it's in a home, grass fires, vegetation fires. They can and do start fires.
Thank you. That was my only question.
Okay, thank you. Kathleen?
Yes, thank you. I do have a couple updates. I thought I would provide some updates related to some housing projects that have been in process. The Blue Mountain Terrace project is still moving along. They've indicated that they hope to complete their work by the end of June, but we'll see. There's still some things that are remaining. The housing element, the survey has closed. And I can't remember how many received. I think it was upwards of 130 responses. The consultant and staff are now going through a final draft of the housing element. We hope to have that released to the public by June 1st. It'll be open to the public for 30 days, and then it will go to the state for another 30-day period, or it looks like a 60-day period. So it's released to the public at the same time that it's issued to the state. And then we need to bring it back for any final edits and final comments. It's scheduled to go to the Planning Commission and then to the City Council for adoption in September in order to meet our deadline with the state. So we're working on that. We've had a lot of good feedback, and we hope to have that released by June 1st. And then we're also bringing back to the City Council an update on the Neighbor Work Self-Help Housing Project. So we have some information we'd like to share with the council and the community in June about that project. I did want to, there was a question about the letter that the mayor sent to Supervisor Saylor and the Board of Supervisors regarding the county's consideration or reconsideration of their cannabis land use ordinance, and that went before the Board of Supervisors today. The topic did not, they did not hit that topic until much later in the day, so they still have more conversation. They tabled it for the next meeting in June, and so we'll have more information about that as they continue that conversation. And I think that is it for, oh, and we also are conducting interviews for pool staff this week. So we ended up with 17 applications for lifeguards, senior lifeguards, and a pool manager. And so we're conducting those interviews Thursday and Friday of this week. And that concludes my update, unless there are any questions.
Okay, if there's no further comment or questions, then we can adjourn this meeting at 8:02 p.m.
Mr. Mayor?
Good night, everybody. Oh, go ahead, Joanne.
Sorry, I just wanted to provide an update to a question that Councilmember Loren and Councilmember Anderson had raised regarding the council salaries. Currently, the council salaries are set in the code at $150, and state law allows the city, based on its population size, to increase that up to $300 a month. If the council did approve that and adopt that by ordinance, then the earliest that increase could take effect would be at the next election, because the city is on staggered terms, which would be June of next year. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. So we'll make it 8:03 for the official end of the meeting. Good night, everybody.
Good
Night.
night.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
You can now